Okay, welcome to the press conference on Falling Stars. We are here with the director, Gabriel, and Richard. Please, an applause. So, if I'm right, the movie is right by Richard, but you co-directed the movie. So, starting from the really beginning, how do you meet each other and how do you work together?
Well, the first project we worked on was a short film. It was a horror film. And then we did another project that was a corporate video. And after that, we kind of had a shorthand, I think, working together. Because we work really fast. So.
Yeah, we met through a Polish friend of ours who's also a director, Michał Pietrzyk. Mm-hmm. And when I moved to LA, he was just kind of gave me a list of his friends in LA, and Richard and I met out for lunch and decided to, collaborate because we had a common friend, and we made that short film, and became friends over time.
Okay, the movie for me is such more than a sci-fi movie. I mean, it's something actually really connected with folklore, mythology, and so how did this idea of witches coming from the sky come out?
Well, it started with a dream. I don't really write from dreams, but for some reason this image wouldn't leave me of a star falling. There's like a kid on a bike and he's pedaling and sees the star fall, and in the dream I saw that there was this world, and it was filled with these witches, and I didn't really know what to do with it. I thought it was going to be like a short story, and I think at some point it was a film in my head, but only because there was this pressure to make a film. I was living in LA with my wife, and we were about to leave. We were going to go to Prague, and I knew if I didn't do something, I would really regret it. And this image just haunted me, and I saw deserts, and the script was written really fast, and then I sent it to Gabe as soon as it was finished. I was like, hey, what do you think of this?
And when it told you the story, what do you think about it?
Yeah, well, what really stood out was this cohesive world that was just you get thrown into this world that has its own rules and has its own logic, but it's not our world. It's like a parallel universe where witches are real and modern society just adapted to it. So that was very attractive, and obviously the story of the brotherhood and coming of age and this whole arc of the film was very attractive. But what was also very attractive was that the scope of it was within our reach. We are independent filmmakers. We self-financed it. We did it on the gear that we owned. We didn't get help from anybody, so we had to set up to do a project that we could complete. And so this story was an elegant little story that was something that we were able to achieve on our own. And so it was a combination of all those things. It was a beautiful, very very poetic and very mature project, but it was also something that we could actually attack.
And yes, it's also a story of a curse. It's a curse you say before, it's a coming of age, it's a story of brotherhood. So if you want to escape from this curse, you have to be ready for the worst of the sacrifice, but the three brothers are not. Can you tell me something about that?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up an only child until I was probably 10 years old, 11 years old. I always wanted an older brother, to like introduce me to cigarettes and Newton magazines. But instead I was the brother that my sister looked up to. So this story was a little bit about me exploring what brotherhood is like and what the love of brotherhood is, and it's kind of like a force field that protects them from evil. So that's kind of where that idea emerged, I think.
But the idea of the curfew and this empty world outside during the night of the harvest you remember me a little bit the period of the pandemic. Has it influenced you?
100%. You know, I think the pandemic has created this sort of irreversible, lasting impact on all of us, and it's going to stay with us forever. And that was no exception. And I think, you know, you don't really think about it consciously when you're writing, but I think later, you know, it's very obvious. You know, interior spaces are safe, right? The radio station, safe. The truck, safe. Mother's house, supposed to be safe.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a very, very influential part of this story.
There are a number of characters that are not the protagonist, but that drives the movie in a very specific direction, and they are very interesting to me. For example, Barry, the DJ, and also the guy called Who I Am. Can you tell me something about these two characters and why, for example, Barry, the DJ, in the really beginning doesn't want to speak with the guy? Because, as you said, we live in a parallel world, but he doesn't believe in what this guy has to say. Why?
Yeah, there's a sequence, you know, in the radio station where this DJ is just refusing to talk to Mike on the phone about this. And he shows his assistant this map on the wall that basically where these stories come from. And when the story comes from somewhere that's less populated, he doesn't believe it. He only believes in these stories where there are actually people around. And so this is kind of a part and parcel of the world where things are slowly changing. The first harvest is coming earlier and earlier every year. And so there's sort of a refusal to believe that. And then to the question of who am I? So this is played by an actor that Gabe can talk more about specifically because you worked with him on a project.
Yeah, I mean, this was one of the it's a cameo of a very, very famous Polish actor who played the Pope, and many other Chopin. He's the Brad Pitt of Poland, and so it was really great to throw him into a crazy role of a desert mystic, and yeah, he did a favor for us, and he just brought to life this really tiny role that is very, very comedic slightly and very powerful especially at the very sort of end of the arc of the film. It becomes really powerful, but it's kind of silly initially, and so it was really nice to lean into his wealth of experience to shine at this really short amount of time. The whole film was a combination of we worked with some actors for whom this was a first role, and then we all the way to these like legends of cinema, and so it was very interesting to see how these different levels of experience brought their own qualities, right? The youngest of the cast members, right? The young brothers, they were all, this was their, I think, except for Sean, maybe this was their first feature film. And so it was just really nice to, right, like see this freshness and this naivete to their performances, and then Oriana, Aaron, this more seasoned actors. So it was a nice range, and yeah, Owami was a character that's sort of the guy who walks in and
talking about the actors. How did you choose them, and how you build the different characters of the movie? What they represent?
Yeah. Well, when you're casting, you want to be as open as possible. You want to, leave the net wide for everybody. And when we were building the cast, we knew the three brothers they were the main, part of the story. We thought it would start with the oldest brother, Mike, and then go down. So we thought, okay, well, we'll find Mike. right? And then we'll build it around that. And then Renee shows up, and Renee just wears this jacket that they wear in the movie. So I was like, well, I like the jacket. I think the jacket stays. But there was something so powerful in the performance that we built it around Renee first. So, casting has a lot to do with not just the quality of the performance. It has to do with the chemistry that they have together. And so it basically was built around Renee. And Diane, our casting director, Danny, found Diane, and we knew we had to have Diane as the mom. And he said, well, she lives in Texas. Is that going to be a problem? I said, no, I think we should fly Diane out for a day. And then Diane flies out. She sees the set, and she's like, what did I just sign up for? Like, what is this? This is not a real movie, And we were like, well, just have some coffee, and then we'll start from the beginning. And then we put a crying baby in her arms, and it was a intense night. And it was one night, and she pulled out something so incredible that I think the whole cast and crew just applauded her after she was done. And then we were like, okay, and then let's do another take.
Diane was really interesting as well from the standpoint of experience, because she's also a very a person new to acting. She is an amateur actor that started acting maybe a couple of years ago.
Yeah, she did some theater, right? Yeah.
And her performance was incredibly mature and incredibly professional. She had this range to do this kind of interpretation, and it was shocking how mature of a performer she was, only having been acting for a couple of years. So that was a gem that our casting agent found, and the casting process was the most I guess adult part of the most grown up part of the whole process, because we have seen hundreds of people for these roles, and it was the casting agent was very committed to it, and it was heartbreaking to see people record the auditions for just to be played for a few seconds, because we had to look at 100 people. Sure. Yeah.
So Falling Star is also a story of a family. It's a family that is going to fall apart. There is a moment in which the son's admission of guilty speech in front of her mother, I think it's very moving, that moment. But after you have the relationship with the mother and the little baby cry, that was a little bit weird, disturbing the way she acted. She looks like a witch herself. Can you tell me something about these two moments?
Yeah, I thought, that's a good read. I don't want to, go too far into interpreting that. I love leaving it open for those kind of ideas. But she's definitely she's a strong woman, and she raised these boys basically by herself, and she's just not going to put up with with anything. So you hopefully feel that when Mike is talking to her. Mike is the oldest of the boys, but for some reason he just kind of shrinks in front of her. And it's just, that's where his place is in the hierarchy of the family. And I don't think that's necessarily bad. I think, some might argue it's like good parenting. But it's believable that what happens with the infant towards the end of that sequence has more to do with maybe a curse on that family than maybe even the mom doesn't know. Maybe there is something supernatural going on at that moment. Yeah.
Another important... sorry, c'è una domanda.
Faccio la domanda in italiano.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yes.
intanto complimenti per il film. E l'ho visto ieri sera e posso dire, la parola interpretazione usata prima dal regista mi ha molto interessato, perché quello che ho letto, dicevano anche nelle riviste, viste in internet, tutto quanto, parlavano di un horror. Dicevano che era un horror, interpretazione. Quando ho visto il film ero deluso, non era un horror. Cioè non era proprio quello che intendiamo per horror. Cioè, allora certe volte le parole danno un'interpretazione diversa dal senso di quello che si va a vedere. E il film di ieri sera poteva essere un film fantastico, di fantascienza, di tutto quanto, ma decisamente non un horror. Voi cosa ne pensate? È un problema solo di interpretazione?
I think the genre of a film is up to interpretation for the audience. I hope we're not billing it as a horror on the program. And I think it's nice to blend genres, right? Just like with music and cuisine, even, right? You can do something that has elements of one thing and the other. And I think as long as the audience is scared and tense, then we've achieved our goal of bringing the suspense to it.
Yeah, I would disagree. I think it is a horror film. 100%. Because also, horror is a very, very broad genre. And it's I think it's inclusive of a lot of different emotions. But I think partly what makes it horror is the exploration of the unknown, the feeling that when you go out into the desert, you're not going to come back the same person. These are all elements of, in my opinion, horror. A witch's corpse in the desert, I think, would qualify as well. But of course, that's not the center. That's only one part of the story. So, horror is a very wide genre. I would be reluctant to not claim this as a horror film. I think it has horror in its heart. Yeah. The only thing that maybe you feel doesn't make it horror is because it wears its heart on its sleeve a little bit. It's very open about its feelings. It's not so cold. Maybe it's not so cut off from, those warm themes of family that I think sometimes make us question is this horror? It's about these brothers. But I would definitely call it a horror film.
Ci sono altre domande? Vabbè, allora faccio l'ultima io. I'm totally agree with you. I mean, we are living in a period in which horror changes skin a lot of time. Now we are talking about elevated horror. Movie like Hereditary, like Talk to Me, like. So it depends from the element, and for sure, I think the movie is an horror. What do you think about this new, let's say, mode, the elevated horror? Because there are a lot of reference of also the old style movie that I find in your movie. I mean, I find some reference to Carpenter, the idea of this, but also to Lucio Fulci, because the black guy that talked to the radio, remember me, the black guy that talked to the radio in Zombie 3. So, I don't know, are you horror fan? And what do you think about elevated horror, in fact?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not a giallo film, but it's. I loved those kind of films when I was a kid. When I was young, the horror film that really affected me was Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah. I remember when I was 10 years old, I asked my dad, I begged my dad, take me to New Nightmare, please. And we go to New Nightmare, and we get to the scene where Freddy Krueger is about to kill this nurse. And he opens his hand and he says, well, I can't repeat it, but it frightened me so badly that I asked my dad to leave. I said, could we leave? He says, are you sure? You wanted to see this. And I said, please, I can't do it. You know, and I think it's because with like Jason and Friday the 13th, well, just don't go to Camp Crystal Lake, right?
Safe.
Right. Nightmare on Elm Street, well, don't fall asleep. That's a little harder. So I grew up just utterly terrified. And then I as a kid, I remember my dad helping me make a Freddy glove. And I would go around and I would scare all the kids in the neighborhood. And one of them came actually to our house and said, my son cannot sleep at night because he's scaring him. Can you please have him stop doing this? So my dad just kind of laughed it off. But I'm sort of rambling. What? I just love this topic.
Yeah, I personally am a lot less immersed in the horror lore, and I'm well familiar with Freddy Krueger. It was very popular in Poland in the 90s. There's also, as you said, like the elevated sort of more ambitious, Polanski, another Polish legend, Rosemary's Baby, those kind of films. So the genre always had a broader sort of range. Carpenter's sort of in the middle, and then there's Freddy Krueger slasher movies, and then there's Polanski. There's all kinds of stuff. So we wanted to certainly broaden the scope of it, and we didn't have a desire to make a slasher film. We didn't have the money. We didn't have enough fake blood. And so the horror of our film is sort of in the unseen, right? And we imply and we veil the terror of what's happening, and it's more subtle that way. And but in terms of the genre, we have a great respect for it, and we hope to sort of sit in the more elevated side of it.
And there's an argument to be made that the word elevated kind of does a disservice to the genre as a whole, right? Because then it's sort of denigrating, like, slashers and many of. I think a lot of this is. I mean, Wes Craven. He was I think like a literature professor or something before he became a filmmaker, and one of his first jobs, he edited a film backwards and got fired for it.
I wonder why.
I mean, you're going to be making horror films, for a long time if you do that. But I deeply, deeply respect Wes Craven, and I think deep down, the real, there's like a feeling like, oh, if we can make a monster someday as great as, Freddy Krueger, that would be amazing.
Ok, thank you very much, thank you to be with us, grazie anche a voi, ci vediamo alla prossima, stasera in Piazza Grande.
Thank you.